Hello, my friends. Have you ever noticed that sometimes we say we want to heal, but deep down we keep returning to the same story over and over again? The betrayal, the rejection, the way we were misunderstood, the childhood wound, the unfairness, that's a big one. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes we hold on to those stories because they give us identity. They give us certainty. They give us permission. And at one point, they gave us safety. We are going to dig into some really fun subconscious thoughts and limiting beliefs today. And we're going to talk about how Uranus in Gemini is shifting that for all of us. So this is a great time to really tackle those limiting beliefs and programs going on repeat in your head. But first, I want to welcome you to the podcast, The Sacred Momentum. My name is Aubrey Bahr. I'm really excited to be here with you guys today after a tiny break, talking about one of my favorite topics to talk about, which is the subconscious mind. As many of you know that have been with me for a long time, I'm a subconscious release technique practitioner, a Reiki master. I'm also a photographer. I love tying in that creative world with my knowledge of the energy-based medicine. So welcome. I'm so happy you're here. So let's talk a little bit about why we hold on to stories, okay? Because that seems to be something that every single one of us do. In fact, we do it even if those memories or those situations are painful, right? So a child who grew up maybe unseen, criticized, emotionally abandoned, walking on eggshells, over-responsible, parentified, never emotionally validated, learn to create meaning around those experiences. So an example would be like the subconscious program, no one understands me, or I have to prove myself, or people always leave, or I'm safer when I expect disappointment, or if I stay hurt, I don't have to risk vulnerability again. That becomes identity, not because people are dramatic, because the nervous system is efficient, right? The subconscious would rather repeat a familiar hell than risk an unfamiliar heaven. Now, where is the secret payoff of this, victim mentality? Victimhood has hidden benefits. I want you to recognize that, okay? It removes responsibility. It protects us from future disappointment. It gives us community. It creates identity. It earns sympathy, and it lets us avoid uncertainty, right? Sometimes staying wounded feels safer than discovering who we are without the wound. That's deep nervous system work. Healing can feel threatening because your subconscious hears it as a death of identity. And this may be one reason why you've been running from having to unearth some of these subconscious programs. But this is where astrology becomes meaningful instead of fluffy, okay? We have Uranus in Gemini now, and Uranus will disrupt the things that Gemini rules, okay? So Gemini is all about thoughts, communication, mental loops, right? It's an air sign. Narratives, perception, information, and that inner thought process or inner dialogue, right? So the transit is exposing inherited family beliefs or outdated identities, victim mentality loops, okay, doom scrolling addictions. It's bringing all of that to the surface. Nervous system dysregulation. So Uranus in Gemini is asking, what if the story you've repeated for 20 years is not the truth, but a survival script? And honestly, this ties beautifully into emotional intelligence because emotionally intelligent people are willing to observe themselves without collapsing into shame. That's the distinction. That's where I would hope we all go, is becoming more emotionally intelligent, understanding the reason why we are feeling overstimulated and being able to look at it from another perspective and get ourselves out of it. Now, I've talked about Uranus and Gemini before because it originally went into Gemini on July 7th, 2025, so almost a year ago. But then it retrograded back into Taurus and now has re-entered, and it's going to stay in Gemini through 2033. Those of us who have a lot of Gemini placements will notice a lot right now, but also people who have mutable signs as well. But honestly, I don't know that it matters that much because everybody will notice some kind of shift in their thought process because of this transit. Now, I am someone who has a lot of Gemini placements, but I also am a Virgo rising. I have a lot of air, so I am constantly thinking of things and being creative with my thoughts and my communication and everything that entails that part of me. So I internalize a lot, and I've noticed that throughout my life. So before we get into how to use this to the best of our ability, I want to talk a little bit about the positive side of the subconscious so that you can understand that this is not an attack. This is not, somebody telling you you need to fix this part of your life or whatever. This is more to inspire us to understand the reason why we have this subconscious mind. Your subconscious did its job very brilliantly, okay? It kept you alive. It built coping mechanisms when you needed them. It predicted danger, right? It created patterns to reduce your emotional pain, right? This is survival. The issue is what protected you at maybe when you're 8 may sabotage you at 38. So here's the beautiful part. The same subconscious programming that can keep someone trapped can also create momentum. Once the subconscious accepts safety, it has to accept worthiness. Visibility is a huge one. Emotional regulation and trust. It begins automating those patterns too. So then you're not working against yourself all the time. This is what I and so many others love about subconscious reprogramming, is that we can emotionally condition you to have a new belief system, that you don't have to rely on the same things that kept you safe when you were 8. So you can build your own paths towards confidence and resiliency, right? It becomes part of who you are when we can reset your nervous system and rewire new programs into your mind. That's what we do with subconscious release technique, and it's like an incredible life-changing experience. So if you're listening to this and thinking, yes, that's exactly what I want, you're finally at a place where you have awareness of what your past programming is, but you're not carrying the shame. You're ready to separate those two and release, right? So the questions that I have for you today is, what story are you repeating constantly? Who would you be without that story? What emotion feels familiar to you? I want you to answer that honestly, even if it's not a fun answer. What payoff do you get from staying there in that emotion? And then I want you to ask, is this truth? Is this your reality, or is this just conditioning? And what would your life look like if you stopped rehearsing that pain every day? And I want you to remember that letting go is not pretending something didn't happen. It's deciding it no longer gets to define who you are. And that distinction really matters. I think emotional intelligence is less about controlling your emotions and more about becoming honest enough to see the unconscious patterns running your life. And maybe that's what Uranus and Gemini is really here to do for all of us, to interrupt the script, to challenge inherited stories, all those generational traumas, right? To expose the mental loops we've mistaken for personality. Because you are not every painful thing that happened to you. You are the consciousness observing it, the awareness beneath it, the person brave enough to choose differently. And that choice, my friend, repeated over time, becomes freedom. It becomes your new mindset. And if you're listening to this episode realizing, wow, I've been carrying this same emotional story for years, first of all, have compassion for yourself. Your subconscious was never trying to ruin your life. It was trying to protect you with the tools it had. But there comes a point when survival patterns start becoming cages. And sometimes you need someone to help you gently untangle those roots instead of just managing the symptoms. That's a big part of what I do in my one-on-one sessions. We look at the subconscious patterns, the nervous system responses, the emotional conditioning, the stories your mind has rehearsed for years, and we begin creating safety around becoming someone new. Not through force, not through shame, but through awareness, regulation, trust, and deep internal shifts. Because healing isn't becoming a different person. It's finally meeting the version of you that existed underneath the protection mechanisms in place. So if this episode spoke to you deeply, if you feel like your mind has been looping the same pain, the same fear, and the same identity, I'd love to work with you. You can find my one-on-one sessions at aubrey-bahr.com or message me directly on Instagram. I'll also put them in the show notes. And as always, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for doing the work of becoming conscious of your own patterns. All right, I'll talk to you on the next episode, friends.